And I would like to welcome everybody and thank you again for joining us this evening. So my name is Laura Howson, and I am a team lead and occupational therapist on the transition strategy at Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital. Each of our wonderful speakers today will be introducing themselves at the start of their sections. And so over the next hour and 15 minutes, kind of our purpose here is we hope to share information on the types of employment and continued learning programs and options, including hearing from the voices of our lived experience expert. And we hope to discuss how to be an informed consumer of services and programs, and how to provide an overview of relevant transitions-based resources and connections through ConnectABILITY.ca. So we have some high hopes and best hopes for our next hour or so together. And so who is this workshop geared towards? What is this information? Who is the target audience? So today's presentation and types of programs discussed focuses on options for students and youth and young adults who are on diverse high school pathways, including students taking non-credit courses, on a certificate stream, in a special education program, or perhaps you've already graduated. Students may have or may still be in programs or courses labeled locally developed, workplace, or the essential stream at school. For instance, they might differ by your school boards. And so this information is not typically geared for youth who are continuing on to the college or university stream. And if you are not sure of your stream in high school, then that's something that you can check with your resource teacher or your guidance counselor. But today we'll be thinking about youth and young adults who are on diverse high school pathways or were on diverse high school pathways. Okay. All right, thank you. So just briefly, some of our best hopes for this workshop that we have heard from families, from youth and clients, and from your registration forms or logins, we found on this slide and include exploring options for your future, learning more about continued learning options and or employment program options and support for after high school, and learning more about relevant resources that can support transition planning. So next up, I am very excited to get our webinar started, and I'm going to pass it over to our lived experience expert, Janelle, to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Janelle, and I'm parent to a 23-year-old who has accomplished the journey after high school very well, and I'll be sharing a bit of our journey together with you folks later on.
Thank you so much, Janelle. And now I'm going to pass it over to Danielle D'Alessandro, who will start us off with our presentation. Thank you, Danielle.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks, Janelle. So as Laura said, my name is Danielle D'Alessandro, and I'm an occupational therapist. I work in the employment participation programs at Holland Bloorview. And I'm going to be talking today about some of the different supports and services and programs available to youth after high school as they relate to supported employment and other continued learning. So to start off, I'll start by talking about some of the different community-based employment services and programs that are available to youth after high school. And there really are a lot of different types of programs out there. You might see different employment service providers or centers, even in your local neighborhoods. And this slide is really just to show that there's a wide range of services. They're all funded differently, and we don't need to know the exact details of how things are funded, but just to know that the service provider that you see maybe on your street corner or in your neighborhood, they may or may not be the right fit for you in terms of finding support when it comes to employment. Because services are funded differently, the types and amount of of support that they provide are going to vary from program to program. And the important thing to know is that not all employment centers or employment service providers in the community, they don't all have customized supports available for individuals with disabilities. So it's important to do some research and to also ask questions when getting connected. And hopefully the information that that I'll share today can help you get started with some of that. So in terms of some of the different employment services that might be offered by agencies or service providers in the community, there are a wide range of supports available. This slide here shows on the left-hand side the most common support that is provided by community employment agencies, and that is workshops or group sessions providing support with job search skills and resume building. So that might be a workshop or a classroom type setting that will teach you how to update your resume. And although this is the most common service, we know that many individuals will need more support than this in order to be successful in finding and keeping a job. So I'll briefly share some of the other examples on the right-hand side of the screen of some of the more enhanced supports that can be available. And it's really helpful, I think, to know some of the terminology that service providers might use when they describe their services so that you can sort of know what they're talking about when you're learning more and asking questions. So some service providers may offer workplace life skills training, and this might be workshops or training on specific topics related to the workplace. So it might be workshops or training on how to work with customers or customer service skills, or how to use a cash register, for example. And I should say also these services that I'm going to describe, they aren't offered necessarily at all employment agencies. So it's important to ask and to find out what's available to you. Another type of support that is sometimes available is job development. And job development is really personalized matching to specific job roles. So a job developer often works with employers to understand their needs in the workplace and roles that they have available, and to try to match that to an individual's strengths and interests. Job coaching is another type of support that's sometimes provided, and a job coach is someone who can provide on-site support to somebody who's learning a job. So that could be someone who comes with you maybe to training for a job, or even to the first shift or for several shifts of a job, to provide support with learning and implementing any strategies or accommodations to help somebody to be successful in the workplace. Some service providers, but not all, may offer other supports to employers directly. So this could be education initiatives for employers themselves, or even incentives. Some service providers may offer what's called a wage subsidy, which is some financial incentive during the training period to encourage employers to hire an individual. And again, not all service providers will offer what's called job maintenance support, and that's support once you're in a job to actually keep that job. And that can be including check-ins with the employee and employer over time to see how things are going. So again, for all of these types of services, the availability really depends on the service provider, and how much and what services are offered can vary. So it is important to ask questions when you're connecting with a service provider. Okay, so I'm going to talk now about some general categories of employment programs and services that are available in the community. And Laura's going to share a link in the chat to a resource list that we have available. And the categories that I'm going to discuss broadly are reflected in this resource list with specific program service providers and programs listed. So I'll give a sense of the general category, and then you can use that resource list in the future to look at specific service providers that you might want to learn more about. So generally speaking, the first broad category of employment programs and services in the community are what I would call individual support for job search. So this is really, these are services that will provide someone to meet with you individually on a one-to-one basis, either virtually or in person, to discuss your job search goals, what types of jobs you might like, to help you with updating applications and to actually apply to jobs. And the frequency or how often you might meet with a service provider can vary. The next broad category of services are what I would call structured pre-employment programs and work placements. So these services typically provide a little bit more structure, where it might be a classroom or workshop format, where participants come together to learn about different topics related to employment. So that might be topics like how to communicate with a supervisor, or customer service skills, for example. Sometimes these programs will also include some one-to-one support, similar to what I was just describing, or they may also include an actual work placement and support to get started in a volunteer or work placement. So, and again, these are a little bit more structured, where it might be that you're expected to attend the workshops or classroom component maybe weekly or maybe a few times a week. So it gives a little bit more structure to the programming. So the third broad category of programs are day programs. And so there are many day programs that exist within the adult developmental service sector. Some programs will include more of a focus on vocational skills and continued learning than others. So for example, some day programs might include a group or individual volunteer placement as part of their daily programming. And this would be in addition to other types of programming that might be social or recreational programming throughout the day. And we've tried to highlight on the resource list provided some of the day programs that we know contain a little bit more of a focus on vocational skills and continued learning, because there are a lot of programs out there. So again, hopefully this gives some broad categories, knowing that the resource list that will be shared with you has some more specific programs listed. Okay. So we wanted to share a little bit about what to expect from adult employment services. So as I've already shared, there is a wide variety of amount and type of service that is provided by different service providers, and the goals might vary as well. So some service providers or programs might focus on actually placing someone in a job, whereas others might be more focused on that pre-employment or getting ready for employment, and more of a focus on training and developing skills. The other thing that I think is important to acknowledge is that many employment counselors and job developers often have a large client caseload. And that's important to know. It's an important reality of the system, is that they may expect you as an individual or a family to follow up a lot in between sessions or in between meetings. So a job developer might share details about a job and say, if this is something that you want to apply to, please update your resume. And they may expect you to actually do that work and update your resume on your own. We do really recommend that you contact several organizations and ask questions to find the best fit. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the steps to doing that a little bit later on. Okay. So as I've shared, because there is such a wide variety when it comes to employment services in the community, it can be really important to have a good sense of your own personal goals in order to ask the right questions and to find a program that's going to be a good fit for you. So the questions listed on the slide here can hopefully serve as a bit of a starting point for identifying what your goals might be and what you might be looking for in a service provider. For example, I sometimes have families tell me that after high school, they're really most concerned with having some daily structure and routine similar to high school. And if that's the case for you, then you might be thinking about some of these programs that provide a little bit of that, whether it's a structured pre-employment training program or a day program, for example. Whereas if you are really concerned with connecting with an employer in a certain field, a certain type of job, then you might be asking employment service providers about who their employer connections are to really find a service provider that can help you get the job that you want. All right. So I'm going to pass things over now to Janelle, who's going to share some of her family's experiences with connecting with employment, supported employment options after high school.
Thanks, Danielle. Hello again. My daughter's name is Natasha, and she has a mild intellectual disability and very mild symptoms from muscular dystrophy. But before I begin, I would like to share a story about my daughter when she was in grade 3. We were driving home from school, and I asked her what she saw in her future. And she didn't hesitate. She didn't skip a beat. And she says, I'm going to finish elementary school, and then I'm going to finish high school, and then I'm going to go to college, and then I'm going to join eHarmony. And I just started laughing so hard. And it would be wonderful if mapping out one's path, life path, was that easy, wouldn't it? So in her preparation for life after school, after high school, I think one of the most important things she did was do a lot of volunteering during high school. She started in grade 9 and looked at a lot of different areas where she could get experience. And in the beginning, she thought she wanted to work with young children. So she volunteered summer, Easter break in daycares, summer camps, even at our local gym, she sort of carved out a job for herself as a childminder at Good Life. And then as she got experience at a movie theater and a retail store and a charity shop and a small office, she started to realize that maybe she was more interested in a clerical area than with childminding. So after logging more than 450 hours, she realized that those early work experiences were very valuable in teaching her what she did like, and equally important, what she didn't like to do. And it also was very helpful. It taught her how to use public transportation, because these placements were all over the city. So she really had to learn how to use buses and the subway. So after high school, Natasha went on to a community-based learning experience at St. Lawrence College in Brockville. And in January of her last semester, we knew that we would soon be asking the question, what next? As many of you will be. And with guidance from Holland Bloorview, we made a short list of the potential placement agencies that Danielle was just reviewing, and other programs that would best suit Natasha's needs. I called different ones on the phone first to get a feel for the types of supports that they offered. And then we chose 3 that we wanted to look into more closely. And 2 were agencies that offered training, hands-on training, as well as help in getting a job and initial job coaching once the placement started. Both were wonderful agencies, and both had close relationships with several employers who would offer job placements. For example, the first agency could offer jobs in stocking grocery shelves, but when they asked Natasha if she could carry a case of pop from one end of our house to the other, we realized that because of her weakness from the muscular dystrophy, that probably negated that type of work for her. So that was very helpful. I might also add at this time that it's so important to go with your child, because had Natasha been asked that question on her own, I don't think she may have been as honest about it. And we all know our children best, don't we, as parents? So our next visit was to a group that recruits workers for the hospitality trade, such as room attendants, food servers, and kitchen food prep. And after attending the open house type presentation, we realized again that my daughter didn't have the strength to lift mattresses, and that the pace of the other 2 areas that they were offering would be too hectic and probably not a good fit for her, too much pressure. I also noticed there that the opportunities were open to the general public and not specifically targeted to individuals with a disability. And so the competition for jobs would have been much greater. So our third visit was to an agency who had close ties to a cleaning company in downtown, and they send cleaners into people's homes on a weekly basis. And they were offering in-house training at one of their group homes to give the candidates really hands-on training, which would have been wonderful. And this appealed to both my daughter and me. And so we signed up with them, only to have COVID stop everything abruptly in February. So the program could only then offer online workplace skills, which were very valuable, but no hands-on learning and obviously no placements. So then in beginning of September, we actually moved away from Toronto. And this past summer, Natasha was offered online training for environmental cleaning and safe food handling through the college that she attended. And she luckily gained both of those certificates. And they were being offered because there was such a shortage of workers in the area. So that was also a program that was extremely beneficial. And we just sort of lucked into that one as a result of her college connections. So my takeaway from our job search would be that you really need to meet with the agencies in person or a virtual meeting during COVID, and be prepared to be very honest about your child's abilities. Again, it's just best to be very open at these meetings and ask a lot of questions. I was asking, is it part-time work? We thought perhaps it might be better to have Natasha sort of gently enter the workforce as opposed to full-time work right off the bat. And also, how far away were the job opportunities? Some of them required an hour and a quarter travel in the morning, several changes of buses, and we weren't sure that that was the best option. So I think it's also important to be realistic. The jobs that are available through many of these agencies are entry level and not very glamorous, and it may not be the type of work that you and your child had first envisioned. And lastly, go with your gut feel. We found that after each meeting, my daughter and I both had an immediate feeling if it was a good match. So that was an important aspect of our decision making. So to summarize, it does take a lot of effort on both the student and the parent's part. I would recommend getting as much volunteer experience as possible, and then just search out the agencies and pick one that you think will best meet your needs. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Janelle. Those are such great takeaways, I think, to share with the group. And I should share that we'll have a chance for some question and answer at the end if anyone has more specific questions for Janelle as well. Thank you for sharing. So we're going to move on now to talking about other options for after high school, and specifically options related to continued learning. So again, Laura has shared in the chat our resource list that I'll be referring to, and don't feel the need to look at that right now. You can definitely access that after today's session as well. But I'll be talking just about 3 broad categories of continued learning options after high school. And again, this does relate to the categories that are listed on the resource list as well. So the first broad category are programs or supports that are offered either within an alternative high school setting or adult learning programs. And these might be offered either within a specific school or by a school board or in more adult learning centers as well. And I'm going to give a few examples after this slide so that you can sort of get a sense of what I mean by this. But generally speaking, there are often opportunities to either upgrade academic skills or develop new skills in sort of a school or academic setting. The next broad category are programs that are offered in partnership with colleges that are designed for individuals with additional learning needs or who may or may not qualify for the college's mainstream diploma programs. And again, I'll touch on an example of this in just a moment, and you'll see these listed on the resource list. And then here in terms of our categories, we've also included day programs because, as I mentioned previously, there are some day programs that, in addition to having a vocational focus, may have more of an academic or continued learning focus that may focus on life skills or other learning skills in that setting. So, and again, that's often in combination with other social and recreational programming. So I'll share a couple of examples on the next couple of slides, and then we'll hear from Janelle again about some of her personal experiences as well. So this slide is just giving a couple of examples of those programs that might exist either within a school board or school setting. And these are 2 different options. On the left-hand side, we have an option offered through the Toronto District School Board or TDSB, and it's their Essential Skills Upgrading Program. And this is really a program that's available for individuals who are out of high school and want to improve their reading, writing, or computer skills in order to prepare for further learning or for future employment. So it's really an upgrading program to upgrade those academic skills. And on the right-hand side of the screen, we have another program that's offered through the Toronto Catholic District School Board. And this program is actually offered at a specific school, just to give an example. The school is Monsignor Fraser College, and they offer a program called Transition to Work, which is for students who are close to graduating high school who really want to get some hands-on supported work experience. So it's typically offers one or more supported co-op placements throughout the school year. For individuals who really want that hands-on experience to prepare for future volunteering or employment. So just to sort of compare and contrast here, these are both programs offered within the school board system. You can see that the one on the left is a little bit more focused on academic skills, whereas the option on the right that I'm sharing is a bit more hands-on, focused on getting some of that work experience through co-op placements. And these are just a couple of examples to give you a sense of some of the options that are out there, and they're both options that are listed on the resource list as well. Another program that we wanted to touch on is something that's called Community Integration Through Cooperative Education, or CICE. And CICE programs are offered at many of the major colleges across Ontario. They are a college program for individuals who either have a developmental disability, an intellectual disability, or other unique learning challenges. Typically, these are for individuals who may or may not be eligible for some of the mainstream diploma programs within the college. Some of the typical components of different CIC programs, again, they're offered at different colleges, so there is some variation from college to college, but typically they involve some core courses for students enrolled in the program that focus on workplace and life skills. Often students also take a few elective courses, and these might even be courses from the mainstream college curriculum based on a student's interest. They often will include a work placement or a co-op, and then they also do provide additional resources for students, such as learning support in the classroom or tutoring outside of the classroom. Most of these programs really, the focus is on having a general college experience. So the CIC programs don't typically record employment as an outcome from their programs, although they often are focused on work skills. So just something to keep in mind when you're considering these programs specifically. So similar to what I shared with the employment programs that we touched on earlier, because there are a lot of different continued learning options available for after high school, it's again important to have a sense of your personal goals in order to ask the right questions and do research to find an option that's going to be a good fit for you. So it can be helpful to think about whether your personal goals relate to possibly developing a specific skill. So if you know that you really want to upgrade certain academic skills like literacy or numeracy, or maybe have a certain skill that you really want to develop for the workplace, like culinary skills or landscaping, then you can look for learning options that are going to help you develop those skills. Again, sometimes I hear from families that the most important element after high school is having some daily structure and routine. So if that's important to you, then you can look for those options that are going to provide that, as opposed to something that might be a bit more self-directed or self-study, for example. And then sometimes I hear from youth and families that having a college experience or a post-secondary experience is very important. And so that's something to consider as well. We do think it's important to consider the cost of programs as well. So some of the private education options that you might see in the resource list, as well as the post-secondary programs such as the CICE program, can be quite expensive. So it's important to keep that in mind, whereas some of the school board programs that I described are often free of cost. So just something to keep in mind when you're considering different program options. And again, I'm going to hand things over to Janelle, who's going to share some of her family's experiences with connecting with continued learning options after high school.
Thanks, Danielle. We started looking at post-secondary options in grade 11. And the reason we did that was to take the stress off of visiting all those different campuses in the short span of time that they're offered in the fall prior to going away to school. And we found that was very helpful. We were also quite involved with the high school resource teacher in looking at different programs and mapping out my daughter's pathway. One thing that I did find was that the school felt that my daughter could handle a regular college program, even though her assessments showed us otherwise. So after discussing it with others outside of school who knew my daughter well, we did not opt for a regular program as we felt it would be setting her up for failure. So I feel it's important to get a variety of opinions from different sources when you're making your pathway. We found it very helpful to visit a lot of programs, again, campuses in person. We went to a huge college campus in Toronto, and after our visit, my daughter and I both looked at each other and just sort of shook our heads because we found it too large, too overwhelming, and she knew that she did better in a smaller, quieter environment. For most of the programs, I went online first and I researched who the program directors were and made a phone call to set up a meeting with them to discuss my daughter's abilities and special needs and to sort of get a feel if that program was a good fit for her. Then we followed up with personal visits, and most were outside of the regular open house tours. And I think you'll find that most places are quite willing to set up a private tour, and it allows you to have a much more personal meeting to ask more specific questions pertinent to your child. And they were all quite amenable to that. And it was a much more relaxed atmosphere. We ended up choosing a CICE program that Danielle just talked about at a small college in a small town, which met our needs perfectly. And my daughter was able to live in residence right across from the campus. And that was wonderful. Our entire experience with the CICE program was very positive from beginning to end because there were only 9 or 10 students in the whole program that year. The teachers and the program manager knew everyone extremely well and sort of kept tabs on the students even outside of their classroom needs. And we really found that the social aspect of living away from home and somewhat independently was even more valuable than the academic learning that she achieved, which was amazing. And just to point out that it appeared to us when we were applying that there were more spots available at these smaller colleges because the population that they serve is a little bit smaller. I know the colleges in Toronto tended to have a waiting list for the CICE program, so you might take that into account if you can afford at all to send your child away. So before I say goodbye, I'd just like to follow up on the story I told you about my daughter in grade 3. And I am happy to say that Natasha did finish elementary school. She did graduate from high school. She did earn her certificate of completion from her college. And just a few months ago, we both went on eHarmony together to see what that was all about. But the best news of the day is that she will be starting a part-time job tonight, her very first job, which she found herself online and was facilitated in procuring through a mentor at her college. And she will be working as a part-time food service aide at a very small sort of long-term care facility near us. So we couldn't be more proud of her. And just to summarize, I just feel it's a lot of planning and a lot of work to support our children's life goals, but they can be achieved. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Janelle. I see Jason clapping there too, and I wanted to clap as well. That's such exciting news to share. And thank you for touching on your pathway as a family. I think you highlighted some really great tips in terms of things to consider when looking at programs, and so nice to hear how it's all come together. And again, we will have time for some question and answer at the end if anyone has questions for Janelle specifically. So before we move on to Jason from ConnectABILITY, we just wanted to share just a short activity here, just to get us thinking about some of the advice that that Janelle just shared, as well as some of what we've been talking about in terms of considering if a program or continued learning option is the right next step for you. So I want us all to imagine that we've come across a flyer for an employment readiness and life skills program for adults with disabilities, and it looks interesting. There's maybe not too much information on the flyer, and I'm just wondering if we want to take a couple of minutes here, and you can type in the chat either what are some steps that you would take maybe to learn more about this program, and what are some questions that you're wondering about this program that you might consider asking. So I'll just share some of the ideas coming in. So someone asking about connecting to jobs in our community. So specifically asking about long goes. And that's a great question. If you were connecting with an employment agency, you might want to ask about their connection to employers in your own community. If you have one in mind, if you're wondering about a specific grocery store or a specific employer, you could ask if they've worked with that employer in the past. Someone saying to connect with the organizers to get more information. Absolutely. I think that Janelle highlighted that as a great step in learning more. What are some of the roles that they might be trying to prepare them for? Absolutely. So what are some of the typical jobs that maybe you help people to get? That would be a question I would be wondering. Yeah, someone saying to look on their website. Asking about success rate, absolutely. I think that's a great question to ask, and something that agencies might not share right off the bat, but a good question to ask. What percentage of individuals in this program get a job afterwards? What is the general minimum requirement? Yep. So maybe wondering about eligibility, what they're looking for from somebody enrolled in the program. Asking about safety, that's a great point as well. Wanting to make sure if somebody's going into a hands-on work placement that it's a safe environment. The last point there, just about academic to work or workplace focused. So absolutely, we've sort of highlighted some of those differences if it's hands-on or if it's a bit more academic. Yeah, what are the final goals of the program? Absolutely. So we can see if the goals meet with our own. Yeah. Thanks so much. These are all really great questions, and thanks, Laura, for jumping in there too. I should share that in our slides, we just included some of our own steps and questions that we had in mind. And again, I think we touched on a lot of these already, and you'll have a copy of the slides as well, just to reflect on some of these questions that you might want to consider in researching any given program. Okay, so just wrapping up, I think just pulling together a lot of what we've heard that it's really important to think about your goals and your own personal vision for life after high school. And I think it's just really important to highlight that everyone's path is going to be different and may not be linear as well. So hopefully some of the ideas that we're talking about today gives you some ideas that might support you on your own personal path. And for anyone looking for support in thinking about their goals and vision for the future, we've highlighted here that there's a service called person-directed planning that can sometimes support individuals who are looking to develop a clearer vision or goals for their future. And Jason's going to touch a little bit on that in his piece in just a moment. I also think it's really important to think creatively. So sometimes that can include drawing on different resources in order to build your own personal pathway. And I think Janelle's really highlighted that in some of her own examples as well. An example of thinking creatively is that sometimes families decide to hire a support worker in order to enable participation in some of the programs that we're talking about or have described. So if somebody maybe has some higher support needs and would benefit from a support worker with them, then sometimes we can combine services or supports in order to find the right fit. And sometimes using different funding sources like passport funding, for example, can help enable this. And I think a key takeaway that we hope everyone gets from today is that learning more about the programs and services is a really important step, and asking questions to find out if it's a good fit for you. And then also just being prepared to be an active partner in the process, and being an informed consumer can be really important. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Jason from ConnectABILITY, who's going to share an overview of the ConnectABILITY website and relevant resources and do a bit of a demo for us.
Okay, this is our homepage, and let me just quickly take you around and explain sort of how we arrange things, we organize things. On the top, we have a menu bar, and we organize our content by age group. Okay, so kids is sort of 0 to 12, youth is 12 to 20-ish, adults 20-ish to 40-ish, and seniors are old. And those are sort of ish numbers because we know that you don't suddenly become an adult at 16 or 18. Sometimes that comes a little bit later for some people. And so our youth and our adults, you'll notice that in those sections, we're very inclusive. So you might notice a section in youth, adults, and seniors, it would have the same sort of resources. And the last section to mention is the COVID-19 section. This has a lot of resources that were all based around the pandemic. Further down the page, in this sort of main area of the page here, is the local community news. Now, this news is something I personally add to pretty much every other day or every day. And there are different programs, there are different events that are happening. I mean, I think our event is listed on here as well. So this is Ontario-wide news, but it's sort of focused on Toronto. And as I said, this changes all the time. So it's a great place to look for new things. On the right-hand side, you'll notice there's some icons here with some big text. Friendly Connections. This is a program that we started in the pandemic, and it was a way for us to stay in touch with some of the people we support. And I just want to highlight this because it was a really neat, innovative program that came out of us. And we connected with people, and we asked people if they wanted to connect with us. And so you fill out a form, and you can get an email blast, or you can get mail from us. Turns out everybody wants mail. So we send people letters. And it's been a really nice way of staying in touch. We've made 670 different connections over the last year. My Community Hub is an awesome database of programs and services. It's a fee-for-service database. I'm not going to go there because it's fantastic and you should explore it. You just type in a keyword and pretty much anything programs show up, and you can see available spots, and you can see the cost of it, and you can even sign up to. So that's a pretty amazing resource right there. My Direct Plan is an online tool to help you manage your finances and your expenses, specifically with your SSH money, passport and residential funding. Resource directories is, I'm going to go there because I think we can talk about this one. It's a place where we put all the directories that we find for our population, for our community. And so there's some up here called Ontario-wide. You'll notice a few in here: Respite Services, the Healthline, Fever Service Program Directory. And then we broke the rest down by DSO region. And this one down at the bottom, I just want to say this just because there's one link you got to see. And it's the educational opportunities after high school, kind of like what we're talking about. So there's lots of resources here. Even if you're not in Toronto, you could go and check out what it's like in Muskoka or Cochrane. And this could be great if you're going on if you're at a cottage, or if you're looking for an opportunity outside of the big city where there might be a little bit more opportunity, as Janelle had spoken about before. Okay, so that was resource directories. Connected families, we're going to get back to that one. It's pretty cool. We're going to visit that at the end. This book a guided tour. This is a brand new thing that we launched just like a couple of weeks ago, and you can be the first person to take advantage of this. If you click on this link, you can sign up through a little form, and you can book a one-on-one session with, well, I'm not sure if you're going to get me necessarily, but a ConnectABILITY staff to help you kind of go through the website and navigate to the tools and resources that you're looking for. I think this would be a really nice way of getting a head start, because ConnectABILITY is a huge place. We have over 1,000 articles. We have over 200, maybe 300 videos, lots of stories from lived experience, all sorts of stuff. So take advantage of it. Click that. Some quick links. These are great sort of one-page PDFs with links, and it sort of cross-navigates all the content on Connect. When you're looking at inclusive education, that's a really good one. Transition to adulthood, that's the topic we're talking about today. Those are good places to start. And finally, at the bottom, access to your DSO. And this is something we have on our homepage. You know, we have all the links to DSO sort of stuff. So I can't stop there, and I don't have much time. So I'm going to jump into youth. This is what happened last time. And I want to jump right into some of the content. As I said, everything's by age group. So the first thing I want to look at is becoming an adult, transition planning for youth with a developmental disability. we created this neat document that is a sort of milestones document, takes you through step by step. So grade 8, here are some things to think about before you go into grade 9. We've included some resources. We've included college preparation courses. That's in what, grades 9 and 10. So along the lines of what Janelle was thinking, start early. There's lots of resources here. There's transition guides here. Some of these are from all around the province, okay? There's 5 different transition guides. Really good information there, but we haven't finished. We were talking about person-directed planning. And the first thing we think of, person-directed planning is the process of dreaming of what the future could be. And we do this in a group, and it's really complicated, but it's in a sense, it's facilitated dreaming with your support network or circle. This page here, Planning for Life After School, is a whole section we designed around getting ready for that person-directed plan. So what you need to know before you get there. And we talk about gaining experience and building a circle, a network of support, and who do you invite to the meeting, and how do you invite them to this meeting? All sorts of great information here. We've got some videos here to check out as well, but I haven't finished. And I know this is probably too fast. Here's our section on person-directed planning. It goes through and explains what it is, okay? It gives some examples. There's some really good resources here in the person-directed planning resource section, really good resources. A couple of podcasts, some more video, lots of information to explore. And finally, we do have an employment section. There's lots of information in there too. And some great some great stories from people with lived experience. So I'm feeling the crunch here, guys. I'm gonna move on, but there's a ton in the youth section. So back to the homepage. This place I call Connected Families. This is the place where we can talk. This is a place where you can ask questions of me, the community, of everybody. You know, there are about 30,000 people that come to ConnectABILITY every month, and they're just like you and me. They're all looking for the same type of information. We're all trying to solve the same problems. So here's a place where it's our chat. If you log in and become a member, you can chat with people and you can ask questions. Okay, everything's above the board. There's no hidden agendas here, and there's no anonymous ghost users or anything like that. But there's lots of great information to be shared. Okay, my final word. This orange feedback tab on the side is a personal hotline to me and the ConnectABILITY staff. If you have any questions, if you have any ideas, if you have any feedback, if things aren't working for you, let us know. We'll get back to you. All right, back to you guys.
Thank you.